Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode in the AorbTech Pandas series. Today we're going to be looking at concatenation. In this episode we're going to cover the concat function, ignore index, the axis, join inner and outer, keys, and sort. So what does concatenation do? Well, it takes two or more pandas objects and it stacks them together into one pandas object. And here we have a diagram where you can see we have this blue object and this yellow object. You can think of these like datasets. And if we use the concat function, we can stack them either horizontally, like this, with axis being 1, or vertically, like this, with axis being 0. In this case, we assume that the blue object on the top here is the first object being passed into the function. In that case, it will be on the left when the axis is 1, and it will be on the top when the axis is 0. So this is a cool visualization for you to be able to understand concatenation a little better. And let's start, as always, by importing pandas and our datasets. There we go. And the concat function works with both series and data frames. So let's create two series here. Call it S1 and S2. Make sure you use the capital S in the series. And the brackets to find the elements. And then we're going to pandas.concat, use a bracket to define which series we're going to use, and try using S1 and S2. And there we go. So as you can see, in series 1 we have elements 1 through 4, and with series 2 we have elements 5 through 8. When we concat these in the order series 1, series 2, we have series 1 stacked on top here, and then series 2 here on the bottom. Or series 1 on the top and series 2 on the bottom. And this is actually the default for the concat function. As you can see in this diagram, the default axis is 0. So we have the first series, series 1 on the top, series 2 on the bottom. And now we're going to try the same with data frames. So let's really quickly take a look at our data frames up here. We have the numbers 1 through 5, and then their Roman numerals for data frame 1. And we have the same with data frame 2, except that it's with the numbers 6 to 10. Okay, so if we go here, we can do pandas.concat. And it's the same as with the series. We use a sequence of square brackets. And then we put in our df1 and df2. And let's see what that looks like. As you can see, the same as before, it places the first data frame on the top here, and the second data frame on the bottom. Now, throughout both of these examples, you'll notice that on the left side, the indices are going 0 through 3, and then once again 0 through 3 for the series, and 0 through 4 twice for the data frames. And this is because it actually uses the original indices of these elements here. Now, let's see what happens if we change the positions of these. We should expect that these indices will be actually the same. The only difference is that one of the data frames, or one of the series, in this case we'll use the second one first, should be at the top, and the first one will be at the bottom. And then we'll take a look at how we can actually ignore the indices of these and use an entirely new index. So let's first change the positions. So the difference in this case is that I'm putting df2 first and then df1. So the second data frame and then the first data frame. And as you can see, we start from 6 to 10, and then we go from 0 to 5. So it's the same thing, but in the reverse order. And once again, the indices go from 0 to 4. We'll add another code block here. We'll use pandas.concat, square brackets, series 2, and then series 1. So in the reverse order. And it's the same story here. So 5 through 8, 1 through 4. The indices stay the same. So now, let's take a look at how we can actually ignore the index. So now, let's create a code block. We'll use pandas.concat. Within we'll put our square brackets. We'll use series 1 and series 2. And then we're going to use a comma, and we're going to put the argument ignore index equals true. And let's run this and see what happens. So as you can see, we've got the same thing here, numbers 1 through 8 for both of these, except that now the index of the original series is ignored, and we have a new index with numbers through from 0 to 7. So n-1, from 0 to n-1. And we'll do the same with our data frames. And this should give us an even clearer example. So ignore index equals true. And as you can see here, we have our numbers and then their Roman numeral counterparts. So our numbers in decimal with the Arabic system, Roman numerals. And then on the left, we have indices going from 0 to n-1. In this case, we have 10 numbers, so that would be 9. And it actually ignores the index. So let's compare this to our previous results. As you can see here, we have indices 0 through 4, and then repeated 0 through 4. And here we have an entirely new indexing system going from 0 through to 9. So now we're going to take a look at axis. Now, as mentioned earlier, the default axis is 0, and it means that we stack our object vertically. But if we were to use an axis of 1, it would stack them horizontally. So to see what that looks like in practice, let's create a code block. We'll put in pandas.concat. Then we'll put in our square brackets, series 1 and series 2. And then we'll add the comma and the argument axis equals 1. As you can see now, it's created 2 separate columns. On the left, we have our index, which for both of these is the same. And the first column yields our series 1. The second column has our series 2. Let's try the same with our data frames. So df1, df2, comma argument being axis equals 1. Here we go. So column names have remained the same. On the left, as the indices are the same, they haven't changed, except that now we have data frame 1, which is here on the left, and data frame 2, which is here on the right. And I can select it here. Oh, there you go. So now we're taking a look at join. And essentially what this does is it determines whether we're going to use a union or an intersection when we're concatenating our data frames or our objects. And if you don't understand what that means, if you haven't done set theory, essentially, when we use an intersection, we take the common elements from both sets, and when we use a union, we take all the elements from both sets. So for an intersection, you only take those elements which are common between both sets. So in this case, for example, we should expect that we have a column B and another column B here. So these are 2 common columns between both data sets. So we should expect that those are the ones selected. And with a union, we should expect that all of them are selected. So to test this out, let's first run this code here to generate our data frames. And now we're going to pandas.concat with df1 and df2, and these have the same names as our prior data frames. And then we're going to add a comma, and the argument join equals, and then we're going to use our single quotation marks, and then we're going to put inner. Let's see what that looks like. So, as you can see, we have the B column here, and as we expected, this is an intersection of our 2 data frames. as we have columns B in both data frames, so those are the common elements. Now let's try the same thing, but with outer join. So we'll use pandas.concat. We'll put in our df1 and df2, df, and then comma, and put in the argument join equals outer. And now, as you can see, we have the column for A, B, and C, and wherever there are no elements, it just puts in nothing, or not a number. And since for B we have 4 elements in the B column, which is the common element, all of these are filled in. And one thing to keep in mind with the join parameter or argument is that the way it works changes based on the axis. So here the common elements are in the columns, but if you were to change the axis, it would be in the rows. So just keep that in mind. So let's take a look at keys. This allows us to label the individual objects. So let's say we have the data frame 1, data frame 2, right? So let's take a look at those. We'll say pandas.concat. We'll take square bracket df1, df2, and then we'll say keys equals, then we'll say data frame 1, data frame 2. And as you can see now, the areas which we have data frame 1, data frame 2 have been labeled. Now, let's copy this over for the next example, which is names, because this allows us to name these new columns which have been created here. So we're going to copy this over, and then we're going to say names is equal to, we're going to use the square brackets. We're going to put in data frame, and then we can also name this column here index. There we go, and let's see what that looks like. So now these columns have names. So which data frame it is, data frame 1, data frame 2, and then the index as well. And finally, let's take a look at sort. And what this does is when it concatenates these, it takes a look at the columns and or the rows, depending on the axis, and it decides whether to keep the order during concatenation. So in this case, it would be A, C, and B, or to sort them lexicographically, which basically just think of it as sorting the columns or the rows, okay? So, for example, if we were to sort these, we would expect that it would go in the order A, B, C, right? So let's test out both scenarios here. We'll use pandas.concat, put in our square brackets, df1, and we've got a new df1 and df2 now. So now let's take a look at what that looks like. There we go. So we've got A, C, B. And now if we just copy that code, and we put in the new argument, we want sort equals true, we should get this in the order ABC. There we go. So if you want to sort your columns and your rows, then yeah, there. That's how you do it. So that was the video on concatenation. If you liked that, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share to a friend. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure to hit that bell icon to enable notifications for our channel. If you would like to see the rest of the course, we have a playlist on our YouTube, as well as on our website. And the code from this episode and from every other episode of this course is available at the GitHub, which you can access from the description or from the website. So thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day. Bye.